Hi, my name's Ross Bailey and I'm the founder of Appear Here. And today we've got Aimée here, who is the founder of Roundtable Books. Aimée, good to have you.
Hi, Ross. Hi.
So on the morning where we've seen retail results announced, so it's the biggest drop since records began in 1996, the biggest annual drop. I think not a surprise to any of us. Most retailers being shut for most of last year. In December, a lot of retailers, their busiest month, had to shut down because of lockdown measures. It's not a surprise, but I think it brings home just how crazy these times are and the last year, right? And I think what we're trying to launch is a Save the Street campaign to ask government for support to make sure that these retailers that are going through a ridiculously tough time manage to survive. And I think the big message from our side at Appear Here is like, what is the point of opening up again? What's the point of easing these restrictions if there's nothing to open up for?
Exactly.
So Aimée, how was December for you? What happened? How are you surviving?
December was literally a roller coaster for us, I think. So I run a small independent bookshop right in the middle of Brixton Village. We're an inclusive children's bookshop specialist store. We were able to open back up in December. First 2 weeks were great. Ordered loads of stock because every weekend we were just selling out. Our customers were kind enough and patient enough to queue up outside. Everything was COVID secure. We made sure we bought screens, gloves, masks, everything for our customers. And it was great. We were extending our opening hours just to make sure we could get people through the door. Online was also really busy as well. So we had from both sides, just really great business and great support. And then I remember we watched the briefing on the Saturday, I think, those of us who weren't in the shop, and called our team member who was in the shop and was just like, yeah, we're having to close. And she kind of expected, okay, from next week or in the next couple of days. And it was like, no, from tomorrow, we're in lockdown again. And we were all just really devastated because, like I said, we bought all of that stock. We were anticipating more customers coming through. And without any notice, we were closed.
And Aimée, what just drives me mad with all this is a lot of people act, and I think the government sort of acts like the high street isn't going to exist anymore and it's already dying. And what they forget is that that part of the high street's dying is these big mass stores that have lots of cookie cutter shops where it all looks the same, which were dying before the pandemic, right? We were seeing some of the big companies that got into administration had these CVAs and all this stuff happening before this went on. But people like you were killing it and doing so well before COVID. And, we've worked together and we know what an amazing business you've got. And what I think is also going is how optimistic people like you have been. Like if you hear you telling that story, you've gone through a year where you've had to be locked down, where you've seen, your sales decimated. And you're sat there saying, look, it got to December, we opened up, we were doing well, we went out and we got more stock and we ordered, and you're like, how do I make the most of this little window we've got?
Exactly.
And then boom, back another hurdle.
Yeah, no,
and
but
I think
I agree with you
that's
about
the tragic piece.
And doing really well is because we opened up May of 19 and we're just having an amazing year. And you're right, it is the bigger stores that aren't doing as well because they're kind of one size fits all and that doesn't work anymore. Whereas for us, we found our community, we found our niche and have been thriving. And it's just like, where is the support for us? Where is the ongoing support and the commitment from the government to be like, we see you as an independent business and are here to support you? I don't know where it is.
And what drives me mad is you've got, what we were just saying, you've got this great business and that people like yourself are going to come out of this. And if you didn't have the restrictions, if you can see this through, you're going to do well. We know we're going to survive. We know there's going to be people back on the streets. We know that people want what you've got to offer. But what makes me gutted is, what are we seeing and what support is there to make sure that you see it through? Because none of what's happened is your fault. And what really drives me mad is that you had this sort of view at the beginning, which was like, we're all in this together, right? We're all the same. COVID's the great equalizer.
Yeah.
Furlough goes to everyone. This goes to everyone. And the truth is, it's not the same, right? You've seen the technology sector and tech stocks and stuff like that go through the roof. Friends that are running technology companies, the growth has been immense because of COVID. And then your business has gone down because of COVID.
Yeah.
And the funny thing there, Aimée, which I just think's mad, is the tech sector at the beginning of this got 1.2 billion in support, match funding. And the thing that really frustrates me is you look at people in the tech sector, and look, I'm part of that, but you look at people in the tech sector and everyone is the same, from the same background. You know, it's 90 something percent men that are white that went to a certain place. And then you've got the high street and independent retail, which is so many people, such diversity, such difference of ideas. And we're seeing nothing. And it really surprised me that this government doesn't seem to support small business, which is what they sort of said they stood for.
Well, I don't think it's much of a surprise, considering we are under a Tory government, that certain groups of people are not getting the benefits that others are. And it's really disheartening, I think, is the biggest way I can kind of surmise the feeling, in that we are the ones who are scrambling around trying to make plans where there are no plans for us. And a lot of what we found through this pandemic is that we were kind of having to anticipate a lockdown, or we're having to anticipate more restrictions, and you cannot effectively run a business with employees on the basis of we think this might happen.
Yeah. Or as you've said, you know, okay, we're now open. We've done this November lockdown. We've put up with that. You know, in November, there wasn't a huge amount of extra sport at that point. Okay. But do you know what? The money we've got, we're going to get more stock. We're going to let's make the most of this. And I think that's that amazing sort of like British attitude, right? Which is sort of like, you know, that optimism, that entrepreneurialism. Let's make the most of this. We are where we are. Let's go forward. And then to see someone knocked back again and not see the support. And you know, Aimée, when we spoke about this, the reason I wanted you on here is this isn't just you, right? This is what we're hearing from everyone. It's the same story. And what makes me sad is, like, you know, what is a city? What are our streets? They are people like you. And if they don't exist, then, you know, what is the point? You know?
Yeah, and I think especially for bookshops as well, we've seen the tiny independents, but also like the bigger chains such as Waterstones, they've all closed as well. And so it's like, who are we now competing against? Ultimately Amazon, right? And we can't compete against Amazon because they're selling books for cheaper, and what we're offering we can't offer, because, you know, we're very much based on the physical, right? You have that personal relationship with your customers that come in, you can offer recommendations, you can build up a relationship. That's harder to do online.
And we've got to ask ourselves, what are we fighting for, right? Like, I really think we're at this pivotal moment where we're fighting for what sort of future do we want. And, you know, you talk about independent bookstores, and many people said they wouldn't exist, right? And actually what we've seen it appear here is 2019, we launched more independent bookshops than ever. You go around all sorts of parts of London, the rest of the country, and you see amazing little bookshops that are thriving because people want people like you who are great editors, who know what's good, who can tell you, who can give you that recommendation that you can't get on Amazon. But more than that, like you said, it's about that interaction.
Yeah, we've all recognized that as well through the pandemic, is that you want that personal connection, and we can offer that if we have the support.
And what's going to happen is you're going to see, you know, the decision that we've got is Amazon going to become just more and more powerful? And are we going to have fewer voices with much more control? Or do we want it to have more people participating? And, you know, I truly believe that, like, someone like you who had an idea, who actualized that, who brought it to life, who put it into the world, you know, entrepreneurship in that form is, in many ways, it's just such an amazing form of, I believe, human self-expression. And we want more people, right, to be able to do that. And if we don't have that, you know, what is our culture? What is everything? You know, it's made up of different voices, and that's what worries me. And, you know, but to add to that with tech, like, you're a young person, you've been brought up on technology, and often people sort of act like, well, you know, why are you doing something on the high street then? I mean, you had a choice, right? You know how to use technology, but you've decided you want something physical.
Yeah, for the first year of our existence, we didn't have an online shop because we were based in Brixton Village. That's where our community were. If you wanted books, you came to us for that experience. And whilst we had plans to do pop-ups in other areas this year, which obviously couldn't happen because of the pandemic, we were very much, you know, here is our physical space, come see us, come connect with us. And
but why did you want that?
Because there's there's a relationship you can build in person that you can't do online, you know, and to cut through all of the noise online as a small team would have just been too much of a task for us at the beginning. We started as a pop-up. We knew our people were there. We knew our community were there. We still had people traveling in from other areas of London, even other areas around England. And we were just trying to grow there first before we took on online. Obviously, the pandemic happened. Fortunately, our website was set up, and so we were able to launch, you know, our online website just before the lockdown number 1 happened. But for us, it's the physical first and foremost is the physical. And yeah,
I was just saying, tell me a little bit more about why you actually started, like the story of Roundtable.
Yeah. So we started with you know, a pop-up space with you guys in the pier here, Brixton.
But where did the idea come from? I mean, that's great. That's a great little self over here. But why? But tell me, like, where did the idea come from for you?
Yeah. So the idea came from a report that came out that showed that only 1% of children's books featured a Black, Asian, minority, ethnic protagonist. And my other business is I'm a children's publisher as well, so I make the books that we ultimately sell in the bookshop. And we said, well, do you know what? Instead of focus on the 99% that doesn't exist, let's focus on the 1% that do exist. Let's give them, those authors, those illustrators, some support. Let's put their books in a physical space so that people can come through and buy them. Started off as an idea. I'm not a bookseller. That wasn't my remit, but it did so well. And the community of Brixton said, why aren't you here permanently? We then went on 2 months later to do it again for 2 weeks, ran a crowdfund campaign, raised £50,000 and opened up a permanent bookshop, which is now Roundtable Books 6 months later. And so all the way through, it has been the people and the community that have supported us that has made us an actual thing. And so whilst we have lost that right now, we need to know that we'll be able to get back to it because it was a community that asked for us and it's them that we have to support.
And I mean, it's such an amazing story. And what I love is, you know, just that you went out, you did it.
Yeah.
And it became something that became long term. You know, you've continued to thrive. And, you know, what I'm fighting for, what I care about, what I know we share when we've spoken about this before is, you know, it's people like you who've had an idea that go, you want to do something, but do something differently. And when you think about the people that you guys have touched, you know, you speak about the kid that comes home from school and every day stops off and hangs in your
regular kids that come through. We have parents, we have teachers, librarians who use our shop as a resource for them to find out what books are coming out, what events are happening. And so for us, it's always been more than a bookshop, always been way more than that.
And I think that's the point, right? Is that independent stores often are more than just a shop. They're, you know, not only are, which we've learned this year, right? Not only are they someone's livelihood, not only are they, you know, sending, you know, putting food on the family's table and all of that sort of stuff from an entrepreneurial sort of livelihood standpoint, but also changing our culture. Like, how many people now know that those books exist because of you? How many people are going to be inspired to write a book because they know that it's out there, because they know that someone's there that wants to listen to them and read that stuff? And I think that you see that more people like you, more people that are able to take a space, bring their ideas to life, participate, more people that can have a voice, creates a richer, more diverse culture, creates better streets, creates better cities. And what's worrying is that without those streets, you know, not only from a person living in the city or living in a town, is it boring, but I really think it affects, I think culture comes from our streets. And I think that we need to be really careful that that isn't made up of a few big businesses that decide and dictate what things are. Because if Amazon was the company making these decisions, you wouldn't have what you're doing today. Maybe of no fault of their own, but because they're doing everything, right? Or they're selling what's most profitable. And what we realize is it's people that change minds and make things successful. And, you know, the difference you've made for some of those writers that you publish and that you've put out there is phenomenal.
And the children as well, I think, you know, that's the biggest thing that we miss as a team is the kids that we see and support and cultivate a love of reading and not acknowledgement that there is space for them in the books, but also in non-traditional bookish spaces. Because I think sometimes the corporate bookshops or the, you know, the chain bookshops can sometimes feel a little unwelcoming to certain communities, like especially when you go in and you don't see yourselves on those shelves. And so we worked really hard to make sure that everyone that comes through our doors can feel comfortable, and hoping to get back there sometime
And
soon.
Amy, how many people do you have working for you in this store?
We're a team of 4.
4. And you
So
wanted to open up more stores this year, right?
yeah, so our plan was to do more pop-ups. We were in talks actually, with a team down in Birmingham to open up space down there, and all of that has been put on ice for right now. But the aim from the pop-up was to make it a regional thing, to like pop up in other areas, have our hub in Brixton, but be able to take what we're doing there, replicate it, and spread it
Yeah.
ultimately around
Amazing.
the country.
And you guys are doing so well. And I think that's the thing for me is, why does, if you're employing 4 people in that store, you're going to open up other stores, you're going to take throughout the country, you're going to grow your team. Why does your business not matter as much as someone else's, and as someone in the tech sector? And the other thing for me is, you look at retail, it's the biggest employer, you look at independent retail, and something like 70p. So
Mm,
70p out of every pound spent goes exactly back into that local community.
exactly.
So it's not only employing people, but it's supporting that local area, that local economy, as well as the countries, right? And that's what we need to come out of this economically. And then you look at some of these big, huge tech sectors, and they're taking out of that local community.
Mm,
They're super efficient with technology, so they don't need to employ more people from that area. And then, as we know, they're paying nothing back in tax.
exactly.
So I'm really, it really worries me that when you're in a situation where you've got massive support for those sectors and you don't have it here. And I think, look, what we saw for hospitality, I know that's something you asked
Mm,
for retail. I think that, we don't want our streets just to be places to eat. We care about the hospitality sector massively. That's why this campaign, Save the Street, because it's about saving restaurants,
yeah.
saving independent shops, saving independent beauticians, all those things, that the beauty industry, all these things that help make up these entrepreneurs and these communities. What do you think would help you survive? What would you be wanting from government?
Um, some tax relief would be great. Rent relief would also be great. Right now, that's a big question mark for us, whether or not we're going to have to go back to paying rent, continue paying rent. Um, and I
And
know,
that's the rates extension that we spoke about, right? That makes
yeah,
a big difference there, right?
that would make a massive difference. But also, I think they've said that click and collect is something that technically we could be doing that right now, right? Click and collect. But also you get conflicting advice where you're telling people not to travel out of their area. And so for me, I don't live in Brixton, I live just outside. How can I then run click and collect if I'm not technically meant to leave my area? So I think we just need to be able to open up in a COVID secure way as we were doing before, right? And I've
Yeah.
not entirely sure of the specifics, but I know that transmission rates in retail have been really low because we are taking those steps.
Well, I mean, it's minuscule, especially in independent retail. I mean, look, you can understand in a sense. I mean, the rates were relatively low in hospitality, but you can understand in hospitality if you're sat in a restaurant for 2 hours and there's loads of
Sure.
people there, that we know that it's around dinners and those prolonged periods. But
I'm
retail,
This one household is only allowed in at one time. We're cleaning in between every
yeah.
visit, and so for us, we were doing all that we could.
But
And
naturally, independent retailers are sort of social distancing, aren't they? Like, if it's a small shop, you only have a few people in at a time, then they're out, then the next,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you're not there for ages.
no,
But look, I think what most excites me is, if we can get this support
mm,
to just see through this difficult period, the next few months. What really excites me is just how optimistic people like you are and others are for the future. And with the vaccine coming out, and with all these other pieces, what's been amazing to hear is how, in many ways, this period has clarified to
mm,
people that actually, I can do online, I'm doing that, and that's going to help me, and I can keep growing that. But I want to be out there with people. I want to be in communities. I want to be changing stuff,
yeah,
and I want human interaction. And I think that some people sort of felt that there was something that was working for them offline, but it's amazing how many people have gone, no, I want to be part
I want
of
to be
streets.
back.
And also customers that are like, listen,
We
you
want
know,
to be supporting. Yeah, yeah, and I think we are.
we don't want these empty cities.
Yeah, in the midst of what can be quite doom and gloom, we are really still excited to get back to it. And as soon as lockdown eases, this iteration of it, I think what we really want is just a concrete plan, right? To not be in the midst of another great period and be told overnight things are going to change again. We just want to know that this is how we're going to operate for this amount of time. and we can work within it, you know.
And look, I think that the annoying thing is that, you know, I think that the government's going to have to extend rates for a period, because they can't have furlough rates, all these things ending at the same period. It would just be crazy. And but the annoying thing is, if they said now, look, we're going to extend rates, and look, if we're going to do it for 6 months, let's do it till the end of the year.
Yeah.
The amount of certainty that would give people like you to plan.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep those 2 people on my team. I'm going to hire an extra person to run our online business, because I know that this can work. And then you go, you know, there are people that are sat here now that have gone, God, I spent that money on stock. I did whatever. I really tried to get through. And we thought this was going to be until early Feb. Now it might be till March. Do you know what? I'm giving up. And I think if someone said, you know what, when we do open up, there's going to be this period to kickstart things like Eat Out to Help, whatever it is, for the street, for retail. A lot of people go, okay, let's get our business prepared, and let's be ready for when this opens up, because they'd have that certainty. And then they know that when things get to the end of the year, they're going to be fine, but they need to get through that period.
Get through this middle
And I just think that this, first of all, the high street's worth saving. We know that because there's people like you that have been doing well, and your stories aren't told enough. It's the big mass retailers that were already on their way out. Secondly, it's like, what's the fucking point of opening up if nothing's there to be open? Which, you know, and the final thing is, what society do we want?
Yeah. What do we want to see after this lockdown? Everyone's talking about how this will change things forever. We have the power right now to decide how it is going to change it.
I agree. Great place to end. Thanks, Aimée. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for supporting the campaign. And I hope that, you know, everyone else who can support it can help support this, because it's for people like Aimée. It's for individuals who've had an idea, who've had the guts to go out and do it, who've continued to work hard over 2020, who've had that resilience. And we want to, you know, help make sure that they see this through, because it's people like Aimée that make our cities and our streets better places to live. So thank you, Aimée, and thank you guys for watching and supporting.